Alright, welcome back to my videos. Here I am, devlog I think number 2. And this is what I did this past week. So, it was really just animations that I did. It was kind of figuring out how everything worked. So like the animator, the animation controller. I learned about Maximo and all their models. I learned about all sorts of stuff. I watched videos, read a bunch of the Unity documentation, and kind of figured out how all this stuff works. So let me just take you how my kind of journey went this week. So learning about animations, I just watched some video tutorials just to get introduced to it and kind of figure out everything, just follow along, see how they would do it. And that's where I learned about Maximo, the animator and animation controller, and I put that all in. So for my model, I just found that online, just an online model that I got, and I put that into Maximo, and it gave me the skeleton controller, which was really nice. So that gave me the bones and everything. And so the animation pack that I downloaded was like this military 8-way direction, like tactical pack. But the problem is it had guns. I didn't really like the animations, and it just wasn't fitting, I think. So I started working on my own animations and learning how the animator works. It was a little confusing at start, just figuring out how the animator works, because I've seen people actually use it for their games, and I thought, you know what, they do it, why can't I? But they did it for a first-person game, so it was different, and I probably should have done that. But then I started making my own idle animation, just figuring out how everything worked. It was really bad. It was like this 8-second animation where you'd move your head around, and it just really sucked. But then I started working on like a running or a walking animation, and about like 90% of the way through I realized, wait, I just did this. I'm gonna have to do this, I think 17 or 18 more times, because I have to do 8 directions. I have to do 8 sprinting directions at least. This is not including the guns or any of that. This is just holding these. But I have to do 18 of these, a jumping animation, and an idle animation. And I was thinking, okay, even if I did them as badly as I'm doing these, because the animations I was doing were not very good. They were pretty chopping, not very good. But even if I did all these, I have to do this 18 times. I thought, you know what, let's just download some animation that I like. So I went back on Maximo and didn't really find anything. And then I remember seeing this animation pack in the Unity Asset Store. And it was like the basic moving pack that I've seen a lot of people use, and I've seen a lot in the Unity Asset Store. So I downloaded that, and because I already knew a little bit how to use Maximo, I could figure out how those animations worked, and I put them in, and I could get a running animation working. This time I figured out a little bit more controls, because I was doing it on my own a little bit more at this time. And I figured out how that would work. So after I started moving forward just to work, I started working on just getting 2 directions to work. So I started moving forward and moving backwards. And it took me a while just to get them both working at the same time so I could transition between those two. I eventually learned more about transitions later, but at this point they were all just really bad, and the transitions were not very good. So for a little bit of time, I figured out how just walking forward to walking backward work, and I eventually got that working. And then after that, I got 4 directions working, so forward, backwards, left, right. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out this, because everything was very choppy. It wasn't very good. I was still learning how the animation controller was working, and learning on how to make an animation, like all the code for that you'd have to write. And I still think I'm not doing the code as best as I can, or just animations as best as I can, but I'm gonna just keep working on it to hopefully learn some other time. But eventually I started getting the forward, left, back, and right working well enough, but it was still having some problems transitioning between each other. And eventually, when I started adding moving forward and left at the same time, I started figuring out that if I'm moving forward and I press left, I'm gonna move left, but I'm only gonna have the forward animation, which I found out was because the animations are not switching to each other. And I realized, wait, this isn't working. That's why forward and left's not working, because I thought my code was working. And after a while, I was like, okay, that should just be, I'm probably just messing up somewhere in the animation controller, and it was because no animation can transition to each other. So I found out that it's called like Animator's Hell, where you have to combine each transition to each other like a giant spider web, and that's what I ended up doing. I created all 9 of the directions, including the idle, and they all connected to each other, all from the directions and everything. And because I didn't want to do that for sprinting, what I did was I turned them all into blend trees. So eventually, after I got the spider web done, I started working on the sprinting. So I turned them into blend trees, the directions, and I got those all working. That was a lot simpler than I thought. Now that I was using the blend trees and combining, I thought that was honestly going to be a lot more difficult than it was. But I just made a little variable that said if your velocities, so I got the player's velocity, and I said if the velocity is over 6 units per second, and you're pressing whatever key, like let's say W, then you'll play the sprinting key. If you're doing backwards, then you'll do backwards sprinting. And I did that for each animation, and that was actually kind of simple compared to what everything else was before, and just understanding how the animation controller was. But then for the jumping animation, I just put that in the idle normal animation. So I put jumping underneath the blend tree of idle, and that worked out a lot better than I thought. I had a little trouble just getting that all working, but eventually I put them together and it started working. And then here I am today. So this week was just a bunch of learning on how everything works, and I think this is kind of the final product. This is definitely not how everything's going to look at the end. I probably am going to change the model and everything, but the animations. But I know how everything works, and everything's going to be a lot easier if I do it again. So, but if you're watching right now, if you see kind of it's like this, I don't know, some weird combination thing. It's because they're not transitioning each other. I'm pretty sure it's because they have a starting up animation before they get into it, and they're not doing it straight away. So I'm going to have to fix that, like probably, I don't know, I'll figure that out. But I got jumping working and everything. I fixed velocity so you don't fall as slow and you can run around and hit speeds a lot quicker. And I got a lot of stuff working. I still do have quite a lot of bugs. Like, as you saw right there, I can jump up kind of at a weird, really high angle. But then today, I finally got a punching animation. So I'm using the rigid body animation rigging thing. And I got this working so I can, let's see, like punch behind me or something. And it's not going to look like this in the final game. I can assure you that. But I just got that working to a point where I could just show off that I could do a punching animation and then make it a lot nicer. So I have a 2-bone IK constraint, and that's just, a chain. It was a chain that I used, and it just kind of just pulls everything along a course, and it just hits the enemy. But everything's so far doing pretty well. I've had a couple errors this week and I've just kind of ignored them because I've just been working with the animation controller. But I think next week I'm going to start giving the enemy his own animations and start fixing up things a little bit, making the gel a little bit nicer, adding probably an animation for picking these up, and just giving them a damage. I think that'd be nice. But right now, I'm actually liking how everything feels. Everything feels more fluent and everything, because I fixed the velocity thing that was actually affecting my animations, which actually made everything feel a lot smoother in the air when I'm jumping. So everything's starting to feel a lot better, and that's just what I did this week. See you next time.